the Renault Twizy. So this one comes from Adam Wilson saying, the Twizy's just fun, innit? It's like a mobility scooter-sized car. Good, because you can park it anywhere. A society where lots of people drive them is desirable, I think. Lol. Seems safer than a bike too. Yeah, it's a characterful machine. I do have a soft spot for it. So what is there to say about the Twizy? Let's start with the development history. How did a car like this come into existence? Well, it began back in 2007. Sachin was 3 years old, and the folks in France set out to create an urban EV that was somewhere between a moped and a car. Now, at this point, they had no idea, where should moped end and where should car begin? Where should car end and moped begin for this thing? What they did is look at statistics. And the statistics said that average number of occupants for a car is 1.4. Obviously, you don't carry around 0.4 of a person. It's mostly just one, but sometimes two. So it was planned to make a single-seater EV with a range of at least 80 kilometers an hour. The car had to be road legal, fun, and cost-effective. As a result, you got a very interesting thing. It's just surprisingly similar to what we ended up getting as the end product. They managed to work on this thing with quite a quick turnaround. The Twizy and its design came around only after 9 months of development, which is considerably shorter than the 2-year turnaround that Renault usually go for. This managed to happen because the people working on the Twizy project had special freedoms that the others on other projects, such as working on Renault's family cars, didn't have. What they did was take the product planning, design, and engineering phases, usually done sequentially, and combine them into one cohesive process. And it worked. After being shown off as a concept in 2011, the Twizy officially released to French markets in 2012 and several European markets in the months following. Many countries only require a moped license to drive, although in the UK you do need a full license to drive a Twizy. Only having a moped license is very important for this sort of thing because there aren't anywhere near as it just means there are less hoops you have to jump through to be able to be behind the wheel of one. And when it's something as experimental as this, you have to make it as accessible as possible. There were actually quite a lot of variants of the Twizy when it came out. There was the Urban 45, which had a top speed of 45 kilometers an hour and had 5 horsepower. The Urban 80, which, you guessed it, top speed of 80 kilometers an hour and had 17 horsepower. There was the Twizy Cargo, which had a little cargo door at the back that you could open. The idea was that, delivery drivers could use one, but the most fun one was the Renault Twizy F1, which gave the thing new wheels, some new cosmetic elements like this funny looking front wing. Now this is a car. Now this is a driver's car. Look at that. Look at that beauty. Stunning. Incredible. Brave. Look at those wheels. I love the fact that they gave it those chunky tires with those F1 rims as well. The craziest thing about the Twizy F1 though is that it had KERS. So the performance was surprisingly decent. As far as the design goes, how did they settle on this thing? Well, there was no focus on making it look fast, Renault said, because they knew it was never going to be fast in the first place. The Twizy F1 team didn't get that memo. But there was no focus on making it look fast because they knew it was never going to be fast. So instead, the focus was on making a bright and colourful character, which is what they did. The thing had a 55-litre boot space. My bag here, this is 20 litres, so 2 and a bit of these, which is a decent amount of space, but it's a small car, so you perhaps couldn't really expect to do shopping trips with it, maybe go to and from work, but if you need to pick up quite a bit from the shops, there's very much a limit to the practicality of it. It's very clear that they were after a new market with this car though, so they were very free to make it look unconventional. I can imagine, if you want to travel around London and don't really want to worry about traffic much, but also don't want the risk posed of death. But the risk of death. I can imagine if you were traveling around London and you didn't want to worry too much about traffic, but you didn't want to run the risk of death that's posed by cycling in London, the Twizy is a fun and practical way to get about the city. But there are problems. Obviously, this was basically the first car of its type on the market. So there are several things that needed to be improved, such as the heater, because there was no heater on the original Twizy. The EV range was less than 50 miles. There were no real windows. The doors moved up and down all as one piece. So you couldn't lower or open your windows. And the price started at £9,700. That's basically second-hand A-segment car price. So you can either spend over 9.5 grand on a Renault Twizy, or you could buy a K14 Nissan Micra, or something similar. You could buy a Clio. You could buy a Megane. So why would you buy a Twizy? Unless you really had the money to burn and were able to just go, that looks like fun. Yeah, I'll get one of those. Why would you get one? It seems like perhaps a poor use of financial resources. Now, production of the Twizy ended in September of 2023, so it had a good run of well over 10 years. However, the Twizy is gone to make way for a younger, revised, and improved version. Let me introduce to you the Mobilize Duo. You can see where they've taken things from the Twizy and improved them. It's clearly a more futuristic looking thing with its crazy colors and funny looking wheels. They say on their website that they're pushing for this urban look. It's got these funny orange and black dashboard. They're really going for something abstract here. The seats are really unique. I'm not really sure what to say about them. I can't say they look particularly comfortable. But yeah, this is a Mobilized Duo. This is what has come to replace the Twizy. You can see where they've learned from things. You can see that there's clearly a bit more space for that secondary passenger in the back who was very cramped in the Twizy. You can also see that there probably is more boot space. They've just made it a bit more spacious. And you can see for a vehicle like this, it can be a runaround. And if there are times where you're like, oh, I need to go to the shops or I need to do this or that, it allows for more flexibility, but still allows you to drive this tiny little go-kart of a car. I'm very interested to see how the Mobilized Duo and the Mobilized Bento, which is the cargo version, I'm really curious to see how these two will fare against the Fiat Topolino. Because I love the Fiat Topolino. To be honest, out of the Mobilized Duo / cargo and the Fiat Topolino, I would much rather be caught in a Topolino because it is just so... the design is just better. I don't know much about the specs of this car, but it's fantastic because it's just a modern mini old Fiat 500. They've taken that classic timeless 500 design and applied it to a little runaround thing. It's got a couple of seats. It is a new urban runaround, like the Twizy, like the Mobilized Duo and Bento, but it just does it with a bit more style. Also, the name is so much better than the Mobilized Duo and Mobilized Bento. But the Fiat Topolino is so fun. It's fun looking. It's fun to say its name. It's got the character that an urban runaround needs. It has a soul that makes it individual. That is something that the Mobilized Duo and Bento simply don't have because they're instead pushing for this abstract look. And if you ask me, abstract is much less likely to stand the test of time than just applying conventions. that we know works and giving a modern spin to it, which is exactly what the Topolino does. So yeah, that's the Renault Twizy.